Wow, worked. Thank you so much, Kathleen. That was an impressive introduction for somebody who's not an anthropologist or a sociologist. My only credentials here are, around culture, are that I lived here for a long time. And I have been very observant. So that's what I give you. But bicultural is a very technical, explaining a bicultural society is a very technical issue. So next week may very well be equally impressive in terms of the amount of information you get from a woman who has real credentials around culture. Anyway, thank you for coming, by the way. Let me start out with a little story. Excuse me. I was rear-ended by a huge water delivery truck a couple years ago. This was on the former bend of the Libramento coming south on the Carretera before the reconstruction. I don't know whether you people know about that, but it was a dangerous place. Anyway, I was hit by this truck. Now, everybody was okay. I rushed out to confront the truck driver. He was a kid. He couldn't have been more than 18 years old. He was on the phone to his insurer immediately, and as I learned a moment later, also to his family. The police arrived and started their assessment, organizing traffic flow. But here's the interesting thing. A man showed up within minutes with a bag of drinks. Coke, juices, water, sodas. He asked me and Tasca if we wanted a drink. We didn't. At the time, I was just concerned about how long this whole thing was going to take. But the man with the drinks turned out to be the young truck driver's father. He was there to calm everybody down. He talked cheerfully about how bad the road construction was and which drink he recommended. Very nice man. But here's the kicker. He told me he distrusted insurers. Didn't need to hear that. But then, like a movie twist, he said, "Don't worry. If they don't come and take care of the damages here, I'll do it myself." He gave me his name and address and phone number, ID. I thought, whoa, only in Mexico. Anyway, he stayed around in support of his son and his son's wife, who also arrived. It became a cheery, supportive family get-together. The back of my car, which was all smack. But also, it says a lot about Mexican culture. The father remained helpful throughout with the police, the traffic, hydrating everybody. Now, north of the border, they wouldn't bring you Coke. They would bring you their lawyer. Okay, so, now in some Mexican locations, Northerners are just another part of the flora and fauna, where the welcome is real and appreciated in many centers. The feelings for this foreign culture and its influences in some areas are at best mixed. Today, Lakeside may be one of them. Mexico just last year was deemed to have the most tourists of any country in North, Central, and South America. But according to tourism reports, tourists are drawn mainly to the country's major sites. In order to spread this tourism wealth, Mexican tourist officials have been focusing on the so-called magic towns, which are now all over the country in an effort to spread tourism interest and avoid visitor population problems and immigration problems. By some measures, Lakeside's magic town seems to have gotten more than its share. And so we have a crowded bicultural community living side by side with very little integration or comprehension of one another. And essentially, and vice versa. So let me start with 8 things I think define what we see as distinctly a Mexican culture. Now, Kathleen mentioned a couple of them already, which we'll be taking up again next week, because they are major cultural differences. The first is the extraordinary power of family cohesion here. Unlike the US, where individualism, personal ingenuity, and efficiency often drives American values and behavior, Mexicans prioritize spending time together, assisting one another in just about everything, creating a close-knit family and community environment that still includes all generations. Living arrangements in Mexico frequently include multiple generations under one roof, something that has been lost north of the border, unfortunately. For example, if a man sold you a car, it will be his brother who might fix your drive shaft. And his father will help you get a driver's license. Now, they're not trying to take advantage of you. Nepotism is a duty here. It's not a cash grab. The family is at the center of the social structure in Mexico. There's no question about it. Much the way it was decades ago north of the border. Also outside of the metropolitan cities here, families are still generally large. Mexicans often don't know how many cousins they have. So, ironically, it is easy to crash any family party. You can come from Colombia, Zacatecas, or anywhere. Call yourself Cousin Jose from New Jersey and you'll be warmly welcome. The extended family is as important as the nuclear family, since it provides a wider sense of stability and security. Mexicans consider it their duty and responsibility to be on call for family members. They will help find employment, finance a house or any large purchase, or help with a serious illness, or show up with drinks if a family member is in a car accident. These are actually acts of familial love that have been lost in other places. The elderly are just about sanctified here in Mexico. They're most often looked after by family members. Seldom does anyone mention assisted care or nursing home facilities. Did you know that there's a Children's Day here? With parties and toys and candies for children, and they're celebrated. A formal celebration of childhood. In fact, it was just last week, April 30th. There's also Mexican machismo. It's not the macho from north of the border. In Mexico, it is the inherent respect due to the male and his role as family leader, earner, and the key problem solver. Here's an image for you. I once had my car stolen on the carretera because of a transmission problem. A Mexican man happened to come along. He said he could help. I said, great, because I didn't have any other resources. He had few tools, some pliers, screwdrivers, but I wasn't in any position whatsoever to be suspicious, so I said, yeah, go ahead if you think you can fix it. But I I didn't have any money with me. So I couldn't pay him. He said that was okay. So I locked the car with that bar that you have that you put across the steering wheel. I don't know if people even use those things anymore, but it was supposed to prevent theft. Feeling all things were in order, I asked the kind gentleman to fix the car as best he could, and then I'd return with money. So I headed on foot back to my house for money, which took a little while. By the time I got home, I found the car pulling up to my house, running perfectly. How did he get it fixed so fast and then drive my car with a locked steering wheel? He rode the car side saddle with his legs hanging out of the driver door for what had to be 6 or 7 blocks and a major turn. How did he do the turn? How could you only turn? He could only turn the wheel maybe an inch. It was a major turn. So it would have been a slow, long arc around a corner, probably up on the sidewalk. It was part gas, part several backups, and part pedaling with his feet. It was an amazing feat of know-how and male ingenuity. That's machismo down here. Now, this phenom can also include making outward, untoward remarks to women about how they look, dress, or behave. Now, these were not thought harassment or disrespect. By all accounts, any rebuff of such behavior degraded a man's image. By all accounts, the muchacha would just smile, tug her skirt down, and finish her sangria. No fuss. Or as the Mexicans say, no pasa nada. No big deal. Obversely, within the family now, back to the family, obversely within the family, mothers, sisters, are also held in high esteem and have nearly complete power when it comes to any domestic decisions, home, children, meals, household needs, decor, etc. And they have a name that describes it as well. Marianismo. It's the opposite of machismo. So all family members and their roles are placed in very high esteem. Okay, that takes me to number 2. The mystery of Mexicans unable to say, no, sir, I can't do it. It was already referenced by Kathleen. One of the issues that confounds expats here is the fact that Mexicans are unable to say no or sorry. This can't be done the way you're requesting it be done. Mexicans will always frame any response to a request in the positive, no matter what. They want to help even if they know they can't. They may not have the time, the tools, the skill, or the understanding to address your problem, but they will almost always avoid saying, I can't do that. Sociologists say this has to do with Mexican history. And you may hear it from another resource next week. I hope you will come. There's this long era of what is called the hacienda period in Mexican history. I don't know if people know about it. Does anybody recognize that? It's famous among Mexicans. Briefly, it was from the late 16th century, or the era after Cortez. And it existed well up into the 20th century. Haciendas were grand estates, fiefdoms, actually, established primarily for agricultural production, but also served as centers of commerce and ranching, Most of these were pretty big and could engage in self-governance, controlling everything, dominating most native peoples. In fact, they were treated as serfs. They play a pivotal role in the social structure and cultural identity of Mexico even today. And that's after 500 years, actually. It is believed that these societal constructs still haunt Mexican culture as an epigenetic influence. That is, customs and cultural traits literally inherited as opposed to learned. It's a whole new concept now. But sociologists are using it to explain a lot of behaviors we couldn't explain before. And of course, this was to please strong-armed colonial masters or prominent leaders or businessmen while remaining restrained and positive at all times. That's what Mexicans inherited over 500 years. The problem is that with no nose to gringo requests, expats often never know when their oven repair specialist or their tree trimmer will come by. And it is sometimes perceived to be that Mexicans are not serious about client responsibilities. It's not true. It's not true. It's inherited from an oppressive history. Other causes for this might have to do with loyalty to family again. A stricken family member in need of attention would change priorities and could supersede your oven problem. Often I've seen waiters pulling the chairs up on restaurant tables while you're finishing your spaghetti. They have families, and family time is often more important than a few more income hours. These may seem superficial, but they explain some of the confusion we have with Mexican and their relationship to time as we understand it. That takes me to 3, the next subject, Mexican time. I'm going to try to explain it, but there's no way it can be totally explained. Mexicans may have discovered Einstein's theory that time slows down under certain circumstances long before he did. And today, science is saying time doesn't exist at all. Mexicans will drink to that. Americans, as you know, will tell you time is money. In Mexico, I may suggest time is a space within which to live happily, with obligations and work stress sometimes put aside for sociality, church visits, or just refreshing the soul momentarily. It's civilized, if you think about it. Mexicans will never understand America's rush to get it done swiftly so that the time saved can be used to get more done swiftly. The key here is efficiency in production, an American existential trait since taking over the so-called Industrial Revolution. But it can be loaded with stress. I don't know. Is that civilized? No. I'm asking everybody to think about it. I lived it, so I know about it. Another tradition here that can mislead newcomers is the peculiar tableau of young workers lying on the lawn for an hour or so to recover strength and resilience while the sun may be at its hottest. It's not laziness or sluggishness. It's a tradition handed down by the Romans through the Spanish and is a legitimate break in the heavy workload that probably started early in the morning for at least 6 hours. It's a siesta. It goes back thousands of years. Midday rest and lunch is civilized. It's not like drive-thrus. Like Popeyes. You go to Popeyes yet?
No.
You gotta go. It's great food. I'd never knock it, but it's typically American. You drive through, you get your Popeyes, you eat it, bing, bang, boom, and you're done. In Mexico, that lunch would be sitting down with somebody and having a nice, lovely conversation about anything. The trees, the plants. Okay. Everybody knows how Mexican time works. When your request for anything is answered with un momentito or ahorito, in a moment, it can mean anything from an hour to next Tuesday. We all know that. It's a quality of how best to spend time. The other part of Mexican time that rattles gringos is trying to figure out how to get more than one chore done in an afternoon. This involves siesta as well. Trying to figure out every afternoon whose venue is open and whose is not. It's a daytimer Rubik Cube. Hours for siesta vary. 1 to 3 for some, 2 to 4 for some, or just 3 to 4, or maybe it's 1 to 2, or open Saturday till 1, closed on Wednesdays at 12, and so on and so on. It's siesta. Blame the Romans. 4. Other subject. I don't know if that helped anything, but it was my impression and my observation and what I have heard from other people. Okay, 4, hierarchy. I mentioned that the family has a traditional hierarchy, and it's firm, with the father as the head. But this hierarchy plays an important role, not just in families, but this hierarchy, it's about respect, and it continues at the workplace, at government agencies, even in just temporary ad hoc committees. There's always a stratification. Mexican society and businesses have been for decades highly stratified. It's another vestige of centuries of formal hierarchy. Rank is important here, extremely important, and it must be treated with respect. I've seen it on many occasions. Decisions are rarely taken until the top boss has approved them. This can take up time. Therein may be also the reason your oven is still not fixed. 5. Are Mexicans really as happy as they appear to be? It's always a question. It's not an act. It's always been suggested of, well, they like to play that part in front of gringos so that we'll like them. No, that's not it. Mexico's history as a colony for centuries handed down the idea, be grateful for what you have and don't complain even under your breath about what you don't have. Something very rare north of the border. Restraint, gratitude, and patience are the principles of a satisfying life. Injury, emotional hurt, or disappointment comes to all of us sooner or later. There's a favorite Mexican saying of mine. Think about this now. I don't know who said it or who said it first. Here it is. If somebody hurts you, don't seek revenge yourself. Let fate do it for you. It's beautiful. It's classic fatalism. I know. I mean, it's that same whatever will be, will be. It's big here in Mexico. And it does affect their culture. So, the moral, start each day with a positive spirit by acknowledging something that satisfies you. While you're brushing your teeth, for instance, notice that you still have some. That's a path to happiness. And it has become, that particular phenom has become a part of today's psychology. Last March, Mexico News Daily reported that some organization who does this stuff, I don't remember who it was, that does these ratings of things, claimed Mexico ranked as one of the 10 happiest countries in the world. That's pretty amazing. And it's the #1 country on the planet for friendliness. That's also very believable. So what you see in Mexico, and in Mexico character, is universal apparently and genuine. I've always felt that Mexicans are natural diplomats because as a result of their long, scrappy culture, they've developed a national character for politeness, a control of their emotions, and most notably, a preference for agreeability. True or not? Like, remember what we did in Catholic confession. I don't know, are Catholics here? Do we have Catholics here? Did you go to confession? Yeah, I remember it. Yeah. Father, I know my thoughts are impure and wrong, and I will never do them again. Mexicans reduce oral conflicts to eliminate the rough edges of everyday social interactions. That's it. And you will see it everywhere you go. Even when they're in a bad mood, you can tell because you didn't get a smile or you didn't get a buenos dias, but it's there. Okay, that leads me to my next Mexican cultural influence, and this is a big one. 6, religion. Religion. Religion seems to be the one European shift that has been the most influential here. That is Catholicism, of course. But it's a distinctly Mexican Catholicism with the trappings of indigenous myths and beliefs. A meshing of 2 religious cultures creating a unique Mexican outlook on life and death. The very latest on this is interesting, and this is really, really the latest. It concerns Mexican iconography again, which has emerged just recently. Our Lady of Holy Death, or Santa Muerte. She is a new religious symbol, not Katrina. It's not Katrina. But again, a skeleton dressed in ancient robes and based on an Aztec goddess of death. A figment indicating that the deceased are still here with us. She's Catholic, given her sainthood, but mixed with the paganism of indigenous peoples. She's Mexico's Grim Reaper, but with benefits. She's a healer, a protector, a safe guide into the hereafter. So she's prayed to, a figment representing the living and the dead, still existing with us today. Now, the Pope wasn't real happy about this. May he rest in peace. she's of the same tenor, I suppose, as Day of the Dead. It too is far more Amerindian than Christian European. The gathering of family and friends at the grave of a loved one, with food, flowers, candles, and niceties of the deceased's favorite things. It's a celebration and remembrance of all deceased loved ones, not just Christian saints. She's real, and she's growing even more popular every day, in a spiritual sense. Anyway, that takes me to another cultural issue closely related to this. It's Mexico's European origin, which is also extremely interesting. The historical father of modern Mexico, the man who delivered the Christian God here, is banished from Mexico's self-image. Hernando Cortez. I could find no streets, no sites, no monuments to the man in Mexico. I could only find this mysterious and hidden monument of Cortez with his Aztec princess interpreter and later mistress, Doña Marina, aka La Malinche. You know all that? You know any of that?
Yeah.
Very, very, very interesting history. Now, many historians consider her to be the mother of the first Mexican, Martin Cortez, because they had a long-term relationship. Cortez was married, but his wife was in Spain. So, what happens when your wife is in Spain and you're in Mexico? You have a mistress. Anyway, yeah, Cortez's treatment of the peoples he conquered was brutal. But not all origin stories are beneficent and inspiring. So this dissonance has affected how Mexicans have blended their past into a conflicted national identity. Think about this. They went from Aborigines sacrificing themselves and their children for salvation and earthly bliss to Cortez giving the natives a god that sacrificed himself for their salvation and earthly bliss. It must have been a dizzying shift in spiritual thinking for the pre-Hispanic peoples. Mexican literary giant Octavio Paz explained it best, I believe. The Mexicans' fixation and the ultimate rejection of Cortez and his mistress as Mexicans' origin story left the indigenous tribes in a state of orphanhood. The history of Mexico, he wrote, is the history of a man seeking his parentage, his origins, and still strangely uncertain as to where they lay. It's a dismissal of its Spanish beginnings in favor of the pride Mexican still holds in its indigenous forebears and all they accomplished as major Amerindian civilizations. And it's extraordinary what the Mayans and the Aztecs achieved, say, 800-900 years ago. They were a major civilization. So we can understand this heartfelt sense of deserving reparations, right? Frighteningly, we aging and money expats here who invigorate economies may be those reparations. My takeaway on this is that the survival of indigenous languages and their subcultures has its own political message. The so-called conquered were never really conquered in spirit. That's important to Mexican identity. More than 20% of Mexicans, that's 25.5 million people, identify as indigenous. what you might find more interesting is new government population genetic studies show that over 50% of Mexicans, 50% of Mexicans today have predominantly indigenous genes. That's pretty high, considering that over 500 years of Spanish and European occupation thrived here. As a tribute to this character identity, many Mexicans refer to themselves as mestizos. I'm not Mexican, I'm a mestizo, which is a mixture of European and indigenous DNA. Other cultural influences from pre-Hispanic peoples, especially the Aztecs, have also shaped modern Mexican culture, especially in art in all its forms, from painting to dance to iconic Amerindian symbols and patterns, and the broad, vibrant splashes of color everywhere in homes and fashions. Frida Kahlo's art demonstrates all this. Also, there's the spectacular muralism that can be found countrywide, an art movement that defined Mexican identity worldwide after the revolution 100 years ago, Mexican Revolution. 8, also related to indigenous influences, the so-called class system. Some sociologists, and you may hear this from sociologists because they have more information on it, or anthropologists. But some sociologists refer to Mexican society as a class system, even today. This is misunderstood. Any stratification is simply a means of social order that has been handed down for centuries. Hierarchy, again. Here's the surprise. This tradition is not from Europeans. It's pre-Hispanic Mexican societies, again. They depended on a strict division of status between nobles, commoners, ordinary laborers, and slaves. And all these groups were also divided into elaborate hierarchies based on responsibilities and skill levels. And it was rigid. Remember I mentioned how hierarchy in its benign form played such an important part in Mexican society today? This is how history has its influences on any culture. For generations, for centuries. Okay, but, big but, according to the Atlantic Council records, Mexico has made significant strides in reducing inequality or social stratification since 2018, moving up 11 places in the global rankings for economic growth per individual. In other words, how much each individual makes relative to what they made, say, 10, 15, 20 years ago. This has been driven by former President Lopez Obrador's social policy. For example, the minimum wage tripled since 2018, and poverty declined by 20% since 2020. That's really a big movement for a large population like this. These are countrywide statistics. Okay, so, and then there's that restrained public behavior I've mentioned a while back. That too may owe its origins to Aztec education of children who were strictly taught not to display emotions, publicly or otherwise. And they were severely punished for each display that was, I guess, noticed and recorded. It's classic Stoicism, Aztec style. Aztec culture was also aggressively rigorous for laborers. They worked hard and were prohibited from complaining. They were punished if they were heard to complain. Interestingly, Mexicans have a worldwide reputation for being hard workers who do not complain, no matter where they are in the world. Again, it's history influencing future generations. Okay, here are some everyday cultural distinctions that I can mention quickly. Public appearance and clothing. Many older Mexican men are still of a formal caste when it comes to attire. They will rarely wear short pants. There is a clear cultural distinction in grown men, in that grown men should how grown men should dress in public. Long pants and a proper shirt with a collar and sleeves. This may be changing among Mexican youth, but it still tilts toward proper appearance. Now, gringo men here have their own local fashion. The problem is that a lot of gringos take this casual wear to an extreme. Short pants, a granny pack, t-shirts and slip-ons, and sometimes with a cowboy hat to go with all this. The only upside to this is men wearing this outfit is also a biometric for ID purposes. It shouts, "Gringo! No, senor, no need to show PR card. You know you've nailed the dress code." For gringos, naming conventions are also confusing. Hispanics generally use 2 or 3 surnames. The first surname listed is from the father, and the second surname listed is from the mother. When speaking to someone, you use his or her father's surname, which is the middle name. You got that?
No.
That always confuses me. A married woman will sometimes add her husband's father's name to the end of her name, usually shown as De Hernandez, which would be a 4th name. But some married names come hyphenated, and that can add a 5th name. So if you're getting to know Juanita, don't be surprised to meet Juanita Ares Benzuela de Hernandez Suarez. Cool. Again, I hate to do this to you, but again, it takes me back to family, as I see it. The Mexican naming conventions recognize each family membership and his or her complete lineage back at least 2 generations. It's a reverential tribute to each of the branches of an individual's family heritage. What else? Finally, offensive subjects. Americans mentioning the Mexican-American War, not a good idea. Mexican poverty, not a good idea. Illegal aliens or earthquakes is a no-no. Now, why earthquakes is a no-no, I have no idea. But I pulled this out of an article on this very subject. What is good etiquette in terms of conversation subjects? Oh, and also any funny comments about Montezuma's revenge. It's not funny. It's a tired cliche that went out maybe 100 years ago. Other prohibitions for non-citizens: don't engage in Mexican politics in any form. I think we know all that. And I'd question wearing Jim Bowie or Davy Crockett t-shirts. Got that? Otherwise, everything else, including protests, is okay. According to popular belief, talking about cartels is okay. These annoyances are good to know if you want to be an extranjero bien educado, a well-mannered foreigner. Okay, by the way, the word gringo is okay for Mexicans to use. It doesn't mean any of the things you might have heard. It's not a Mexican slur for foreigners, although some Mexicans and foreigners believe it is, so you will rarely hear Mexicans using it, because it might be offensive. According to etymologists, and many of you probably know this, according to etymologists, it's a corruption of the word griego, for Greek. And by extension, it's someone foreign or incomprehensible who doesn't speak Spanish. It's the same as when we say, it's Greek to me. If it's okay to talk about cartels, most cartel altercations and violence really rarely do involve foreigners. That's a truism. For gringos, the most dangerous thing while out walking at night are the broken sidewalks. That said, there appears to be a big problem here with Mexican youth. Government studies have shown that the news of bloodshed, fears, and tension is having an intense impact on the young and their subsequent admiration of a narco culture. But this would be for another socio-economic discussion, and it may be picked up next week by a person with more credentials.
Would you say that again?
Now, what I believe are the Mexican impressions of our cultural differences, with Ajijic often being referred to jokingly as Mexicans by Gringolandia. It's an acknowledgement that Mexicans see many cultural problems as the result of overpopulation of Northerners. Here en masse, but as an insular fringe community. And it's especially true at Lakeside. First observation, Mexicans are learning their English in greater numbers as a pragmatic second language. But many expats have their own priorities. Learning a new language takes work. And as expat retirees, their era of work and training is essentially over. But with this language incapacity, they remain more a communications problem. Mexicans already find them a royal pain, according to the popular Mexican News Daily. And this language gap may be one of the reasons, in fairness to expats. As far as language learning goes, to do it, time is necessary to immerse into a new language. And Mexicans may feel they'd rather use their time on other things. Okay, next. Mexicans have been living under the rule of aristocracy for much of their history. And expat occupation, with its economic advantages, still stingingly feels like their former authoritarian royal pains in whatever body part you want to apply it. The cost of living for many Mexicans here, including many who are nueva media clase, middle class, goes up because of the gringo flood of discretionary spending, while Lakeside natives don't always gain proportionate benefits. So one can understand hardworking nationals feeling they're being taken advantage of, a perceived disadvantage they still keep to themselves out of natural cortesía, their sense of politeness and tolerance. See, because foreigners get to spend their money on constant entertainment, regular meals out, travel where and when, a lavish lifestyle and home life, which to further the negativity often depends on Mexicans who help maintain it. It's not flaunting, it's just the retirement dream. Next, there's the underlying discomfort with gringos trying to change the area they populate to something like where they came from, north of the border. Whenever anything comes up that they dislike, like, it could be anything, street lamps, worn street signs, trash pickup, littered neighborhoods, and so on, they seem to be the first to complain. The unspoken reference many Mexicans get from this is that Mexican life and culture isn't good enough. This sentiment is sardonically called gringification. I'm sure you've heard it. Next, immigration abuse is also divisive. When former President Lopez Obrador mentioned 2 years ago that Mexico was having an immigration crisis, he wasn't talking about refugees from Central America or Haiti or anywhere beyond. He was talking about north of the border expats who never renewed their visas. These people give all Norte Americanos a look of hypocrisy, given all the fuss raised about Hispanics overstaying their welcome in the U.S. According to Mexican Daily Post, Americans and Canadians are being deported in record numbers every day over expired visas. No one ever hears about that, do they? Next, criminal pursuit. There's also a sense, whether real or illusory, I don't know, that crimes against gringos by a cartel violence or in any form ranks higher in priority among law enforcement than if the same crimes targeted native Mexicans. Preferential treatment around this may be a real sore spot in some regions here, if it's true and if it's confirmed, which it has been, apparently, by news stories. Next, Lakeside seems to have become a medical haven for North Americans. There are the historic runs on gringo facelifts, tummy tucks, designer augmentations, and so on. To many Mexicans, it's another privilege based on inequality. To gringos, it's good money management to come down here and have all this stuff done. Also, foreigners are mostly at retirement age, and many sign up for IMSS, which is currently the public healthcare system for Mexicans. All are treated fairly, but in time, gringo influx could hit a critical mass and could overwhelm the system. This is perceived as another gringo privilege. Next, impatience. Gringo expectations always seem to be far more urgent than our more patient Mexican neighbors. Mexicans are used to waiting for services. It's that Spartan patience that rarely exists north of the border. I know I'm guilty of it. I once saw a Mexican with a bottle of Coke wait to pay for it at Walmart for almost half an hour in the express line. Again, no pasa nada, no big deal. Finally, something seldom considered. Seldom considered. The bulk of expat settlements at Lakeside exists within a small stretch of the lakeshore. That's Ajijic and its surrounding areas, from Riberas to just west of Villanova. Most foreigners prefer to live where the action is and where needs can be readily met. It's another disparity, given that the foreigners can choose the area of greatest value and convenience. And this also exacerbates the problems of infrastructure and overpopulation. I believe Ajijic performing magic is just getting started. The area requires huge investments in infrastructure, electrical grids, water quality, delivery of services, traffic overload, and so on. And some of Lakeside's cobblestone streets are 100 years old. And so are the potholes. And in a discreet sort of way, each culture is blaming the other for the problems. That's unheard of. Nobody ever says anything about it, but it's true. Ironically, a recent report in the Guadalajara Reporter stated that many expats lately have been looking for alternative places to retire. That's a new twist, given that resident gringos can also be the ones complaining and protesting about their own overcrowding. There are over 120 magic towns now in Mexico. More Gringo land is? To be fair, it's important to mention that many gringos do volunteer and have volunteered over the years. I've been here for many humanitarian projects that I've seen serve the have-nots, the children, and the disabled. Many gringo entertainment productions here are benefits, providing significant donations to local humanitarian needs. I think this is Norte Americano's way of paying back to a community that has provided them with so much. Much is also being done among gringos and Mexicans to create opportunities and agencies to bring the two groups together, especially for Mexican children, by offering extracurricular education of every sort. Individual efforts such as the Carpenter Workshop, I don't know if you guys have ever seen that, but that was one of the genuinely great ideas that came out of gringos offering to teach young Mexicans. It taught carpentry to young children, male and female. Also, much of this reaching out is a result of efforts of this very institution, the Lake Chapala Society. If you're interested in getting involved, talk to one of the directors here for more information, please. If you have anything that you think you can help with, we would appreciate seeing you and hearing from you. But what's most essential for assimilation here? Each culture needs to learn as much about the other culture as possible, engage one another to help with the bicultural misunderstandings and share common experiences wherever possible. Also engage in interactions that are inclusive, cordial, and mutually self-enhancing. I don't believe these to be original ideas. They're certainly not mine. I'm sure all of you have thought about them. But they are worth noting during any discussion of cultural integration. To close, let me just say one thing. Rich or poor, the one thing man will always have is his cultural distinction. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We needed to hear that. You said in your talk that you made one sentence about how young Mexicans feel about this. And when you said that, your voice lowered, and then the next sentence you said was, but that's for another talk.
Okay.
Could you please repeat what you said about how young Mexicans feel?
It's a very serious subject based on what I do know, and to try to include it here would have been unfair because it really needs to be discussed sociologically. It has to do with a couple of studies that showed that school children, when asked to draw some of the things that make them happy or that they feel happy about, draw Kalashnikovs, draw people with bullet holes in their head and so on. So it's not a good subject for this presentation, but it is a serious subject, and it will play out over generations, I believe. Thanks for asking.
Thank you guys for coming. Oh wait, we have one more question.
I thought your presentation was fabulous.
Oh, thank you.
And I was curious if these recordings that are being made here would be made available to us, because I have friends in Canada and the United States that would love to know a lot of the things that you discussed today about what it's like to be here. So I'm curious if this is something that would be available to us.
Absolutely. So as I said, give me the mic back. As I said, please go on the website, opencircleahigeek.org. You will find this presentation. Give it about 3 or 4 days. Send it to everybody you know. And all of the past presentations are there as well. Thank you all for coming today. We really enjoyed it.
Thank you.